I set the manila envelope on the coffee table between us. Diane looked at it the way you look at something you buried that came back up through the dirt. A woman named Brenda sent me this, I said. Victor's ex-wife. Diane's mouth opened, but nothing came out. And for the first time in 13 years, I watched my wife run out of words before I did. I drive a truck. Have for 19 years. I tell people that, and they picture something romantic or something sad. Depending on who they are, it is neither. It is a job. You sit in a cab and watch America come at you through a windshield, and you learn that most of this country is just grass and distance, and people who could not pick their state representative out of a lineup. I am fine with that. I have never needed the world to be more interesting than it is. I met Diane at a sports bar during a Colts game in 2013. She was with a group of friends and I was alone, which was not unusual. She came over because I was the only person in the bar not yelling at the television. She said, "You don't care if they win?" I said, "I care. I just don't think the TV can hear me." She laughed. That was the beginning of everything. We got married 2 years later. Small ceremony. Her parents, my dad, a few friends. My father Ray drove up from Terre Haute in his truck that had no business making the trip and wore a suit I had never seen him in before or after. He shook Diane's hand at the reception and said, "Take care of my kid." She said, "I will." He nodded like that settled it. We rented a split level on the east side of Indianapolis. Nothing special. 3 bedrooms, a garage I never park in, a backyard the girls have torn up with every sport they have tried and abandoned. Emma is 11 now. Grace is 8. They are the best things I've ever been part of. I was gone Monday through Thursday, every week. Louisville, Cincinnati, Columbus, sometimes further. Home Thursday night, gone Monday morning. That was the deal. Diane handled the house, the bills, the school stuff, the doctor appointments. I handled the income. We were a team the way a relay is a team. I ran my leg and handed off the baton and trusted her to run hers. The first Colts game after Emma was born, I stayed home. Diane was exhausted, and the baby would not stop crying, and I sat on the couch holding my daughter, while Diane slept for the first time in what seemed like days. The Colts lost by 3. I did not care. I had never been happier sitting still. That same weekend, I found out later, Diane opened a personal checking account at a different bank. She told me it was for household budgeting. I said, whatever makes it easier. I did not think about that account again for a very long time. My father died 18 months ago. Heart attack in his garage in Terre Haute. He was 67. He left me everything he had. The house sale, his savings, his life insurance, $86,000. That was Ray Mitchell's entire life converted to a number. I cried once at the funeral, and have not cried since, but I keep one of his socket wrenches in the glove box of my rig. I do not use it. I just like knowing it is there. Diane said she would handle investing the inheritance. She said she understood that stuff better than I did, which was true. I have never had $86,000. I have never had a quarter of that in one place. She said she would put it in a growth fund. I signed what she told me to sign. I went back on the road and drove past Terre Haute 3 times a week and slowed down near the exit every single time because I kept forgetting my dad was not there anymore. While I was slowing down at my dead father's exit on I-70, Diane was wiring his money to the Gulf Coast. I just did not know that yet. 14 months after my father died, Grace said she wanted to do softball. Emma needed braces, regular stuff, kid stuff, and I thought, we have Dad's money. Some of that should go to the girls. That is what he would have wanted. I asked Diane how the investment was doing. She said, it's in a growth fund. We shouldn't touch it for at least 2 years. I said, can I see the statements? She said, I'll pull them up this weekend. The weekend passed. I asked again on Monday morning before I left. She said, I'll email you the login. I drove to Louisville. I drove to Cincinnati. I drove home Thursday. No email. The third time I asked, I was on the road. I texted her, can you just send me a screenshot of the balance? She wrote back, I'm at work. I'll do it tonight. She did not do it that night. 3 asks, 3 deflections. I was not suspicious of an affair. That thought was nowhere near my mind. I was suspicious that something had happened to my father's money. That thought sat in the cab with me like a passenger I could not drop off. The week after my 3rd ask, Diane took the girls to the zoo on a Wednesday. School was out for a teacher workday. She posted pictures, Emma feeding a giraffe, Grace making a face at a tortoise. Happy family stuff. While she was at the zoo with my daughters, I was hauling paper products on I-65, thinking about how my wife could not produce a single screenshot of an account that supposedly held $86,000. I called our bank from the cab. The joint account, the one I deposited the inheritance into, showed a transfer 18 months ago to an account number I did not recognize. The representative said she could not give me details on the receiving account because it was not in my name. I hung up and drove 40 miles without thinking about anything at all. The manila envelope arrived on a Tuesday. I was in Louisville. It sat on the kitchen counter for 2 days. I came home Thursday night, saw my name handwritten in blue ink, and opened it standing up because I thought it was something from my father's estate. Inside, a printed copy of a beach house lease in Gulf Shores, Alabama. 2 names on the lease: Diane Mitchell, Victor Reeves. A payment summary showing $74,000 paid toward a 2-year beachfront lease with a purchase option. Bank transfer records showing $86,000 moved from our joint account to an account in Diane's name only, then dispersed in 3 payments to a leasing company, and a handwritten note on lined paper. I thought you should see where your money went. I wish someone had told me sooner. Signed, Brenda. I stood in the kitchen and read every page twice. The lease start date was 5 weeks after my father's funeral. 5 weeks. The dirt on his grave had not settled, and Diane was signing paperwork on a beach house with a man I had never heard of. I put the lease down. I picked up the payment records. $74,000 of $86,000. My father's house. My father's savings account that he added to every month for 30 years. My father's life insurance that he kept paying because he said, I want you taken care of. All of it. Converted to a 2-year beachfront lease co-signed by a real estate agent named Victor Reeves. I looked at the transfer dates. The first payment went through while I was driving a load to Columbus. I had called Diane from a rest stop that night to tell her Grace's teacher had emailed about a reading award. Diane said, That's great. I'll call the school tomorrow. She had wired $28,000 to the Gulf Coast that afternoon. I did not scream. I did not punch anything. I stood in my kitchen at 9:30 on a Thursday night and felt something drain out of me so completely that for a moment I was not sure I was still standing. I read Brenda's note again. I wish someone had told me sooner. I folded every page back into the envelope and went to the garage. I opened my truck toolbox and picked up my father's socket wrench, the one I keep but never use. I held it for a long time. It was cold and heavy, and it smelled like oil, and like his garage, and like every Saturday I spent handing him tools while he explained what he was fixing and why. I put it back. I went inside. I put the manila envelope in the gun safe in the bedroom closet. The combination is my father's birthday. Diane does not know it. I sat on the edge of the bed. The girls were asleep down the hall. Diane was at her Thursday book club, which I now understood differently. I looked at my hands. They were steady. I do not know why that surprised me, but it did. I was not going to confront her. I was not going to yell. I was going to find out exactly what she had done, and then I was going to make sure my father's money, or what was left of it, came back to his granddaughters. That was the only thought in my head, and it was perfectly clear. I know. Worst possible time to interrupt. But I desperately need 200 more subscribers, because I made a bet with my neighbor that I could fill a kiddie pool with rubber ducks equal to my subscriber count. And honestly, I cannot lose to that man again. Subscribe. Now back to Sam. I called Brenda the next morning from my rig. Somewhere outside of Dayton, parked at a fuel stop with the engine idling, she answered on the second ring like she had been waiting. Brenda told me everything. Victor was her ex-husband. They divorced 4 years ago. They shared custody of a teenage son. She had kept tabs on Victor. Not out of jealousy, but because she said, I need to know what kind of life my kid walks into on his weekends. She found out about Diane 6 months ago. She spent time pulling what she could from public records tied to the lease filing. Diane had listed my work schedule on the lease application. Gone Monday through Thursday, which is how Brenda knew to mail the envelope on a Tuesday. We talked for 40 minutes. I recorded the call with her permission. She said, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because someone should have done it for me. I said, I understand. She said, do you have a lawyer? I said, not yet. She said, get one. I called a divorce attorney in Indianapolis who specialized in asset recovery. I told him the short version. He said the inheritance had a strong argument for being classified as separate property under Indiana law, but I needed documentation. My father's will, the insurance payout addressed to me specifically, the deposit records. I said, I know where all of that is. The next Tuesday, I adjusted my route. I drove to Terre Haute and parked my rig on the street outside my father's old attorney's office. A woman at the front desk recognized my last name. She said, Ray's son. I said, yes, ma'am. She pulled the estate file. I walked out with copies of the will, the insurance disbursement, and the original bank deposit showing the $86,000 going into our joint account under my name. 3 weeks of preparation, all of it from the road. Phone calls from the cab, paperwork from truck stops, legal consultations during layovers in parking lots. Diane had no idea because the road had always been my invisible life. She knew when I left and when I came home. Everything between was mine. The near miss happened on a Saturday. Week 2. The girls were in the backyard, and Diane was making lunch. She said, "M's braces consultation is in 2 weeks. I was thinking we could use some of the investment for that." I went still. She was offering to spend a fraction of the money she had already stolen to maintain the illusion that it still existed. I looked at her standing at the counter, slicing tomatoes, and I thought about the beach house, the lease with her name on it, and a man named Victor Reeves standing on a porch that my father paid for. I said, "Yeah, that makes sense. Whatever you think." She nodded and went back to the tomatoes. I walked to the bathroom and gripped the edge of the sink until my knuckles turned white. Then I let go. I washed my hands. I went back to the kitchen and ate lunch with my family. The following Thursday, I came home at my usual time. The girls were asleep. Diane was on the couch watching television. I sat down in the chair across from her, not next to her. "I need to see the investment account," I said. "Tonight." She started the deflection. "Babe, it's late. I'll pull it up this week." "There is no investment account, Diane." She stopped. Her hand was still on the remote. She did not put it down. I took the manila envelope from behind the couch cushion where I had placed it before she got home. I set it on the coffee table. "A woman named Brenda sent me this. Victor's ex-wife." Her face did 3 things in 2 seconds: confusion, recognition, and something I had never seen on her before, the look of someone watching a building they thought was solid start to lean. I laid out the lease, the payment records, and my father's will, side by side. I said, "That was my dad's money, Diane. That was all he had." Her first words, "It's marital property, Sam. We can talk about this with a mediator." Not, "I'm sorry," not, "let me explain." She went legal before she went human. I sat there and watched my wife of 10 years respond to being caught spending a dead man's inheritance on a beach house with another man by citing property law. "I've already talked to an attorney," I said. "The inheritance is traceable as separate property. We have my dad's will, the insurance payout addressed to me, and the deposit records. His old attorney in Terre Haute kept copies of everything." That was when her composure cracked. She leaned forward. "You don't understand. Victor and I were going to sell the lease option in 2 years. I was going to put the money back. It was going to be worth more." I let that sit in the room. She genuinely believed she could take $86,000 from a dead man's estate, invest it in a beach house with her affair partner, flip it, return the original amount, and pocket the profit. All while I drove I-70 and slowed down near my father's exit. In her mind, it was a financial play, not theft. She had told me I put it in a growth fund, and by her own accounting she had. The growth fund was a beachfront property in Gulf Shores. The fund manager was a man named Victor. I called Victor the next morning from my rig. He answered, and I introduced myself. I said, "The $74,000 Diane put toward that lease came from my father's estate. He died 18 months ago. That was his life insurance and his house. I thought you should know what you're living in." Long silence. Then, "I didn't know that." "Now you do," I said. And I hung up. Maybe that was not fair. Victor might not have known where the money came from. Diane told him she had savings from her job. But I wanted him to feel the weight of what was under his feet when he walked across that porch. I wanted him to know whose life built that floor. Maybe that was justice. Maybe I just needed someone else to carry what I was carrying for a minute. I am still not sure which one it was. Diane is contesting the separate property claim. My attorney has the paper trail, Ray's will, the insurance check with my name on it, the deposit records, the transfer she made without my knowledge. The case is not settled. These things take time. I still drive past the Terre Haute exit 3 times a week. I do not slow down anymore. The socket wrench is still in the glove box. Last week, Grace asked me if Grandpa left her anything. I told her, he left you plenty. I'm making sure of it. The beach house lease has 17 months left on it. Diane is still on it. So is Victor. My attorney filed a motion to freeze disbursement from the lease pending resolution of the asset claim. Diane's attorney filed a response. Papers going back and forth. Meanwhile, my daughters need braces and softball cleats, and I am paying for those out of what I earn from the road, because the $86,000 my father spent his whole life saving is sitting in a beachfront property 12 hours south of here with another man's name on the mailbox. Some mornings I think about my dad in his garage, adding $20 to that savings account after a 10-hour day under somebody's engine. He did that for 30 years so his son would have something. His son has something. A legal case number and a socket wrench. I do not know how this ends yet. I know how it started, and I know that my girls are going to get what their grandfather left them. That part is not negotiable. Well, here's my take. Sam did not scream, did not threaten, or throw a single thing. He drove his routes, made his calls, gathered his evidence, and sat down across from his wife with a manila envelope and the patience of a man who hauls freight for a living. That composure is earned, not performed. The smartest move was retrieving Ray's estate documents from the attorney in Terre Haute. This is the kind of detail that wins in court because it proves the money was never marital. It was a father's life handed to his son. Now, the Victor call, that's where people are going to split. Sam says he's not sure if it was justice or pain transfer. I think it was both. And I think both were earned. Diane's, I was going to put it back, might be the most chilling line the story has ever run. She converted a dead man's legacy into a real estate play and genuinely believed the math made it acceptable. The math does not make it acceptable. Nothing makes it acceptable. Sam is still driving, still steady. The case is not over, but Ray Mitchell's granddaughters are going to get what he left them. I believe that completely. So where do you land on the Victor call? Was Sam right to tell him where the money came from, or did he cross the line? And Diane's logic that she was going to flip it and put it back, does that make it better or worse? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed and click on the next one. It's on the screen right now.